Hey, Greg, did you go on the web and read the intro for today's sermon?
I did. Why do you think I was so anxious to get you here on time today?
Well, I was only asking because I didn't get a chance to read it.
Well, darling, you're in luck because today's sermon is about what is the best thing that you can do for me. It's going to be awesome.
Oh, thank you. I almost forgot I loaned this to you. Isn't it the best book ever?
Hey, what is that?
One of my favorite books. It's called For My Darling.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I haven't read that one. Sounds awesome, though.
Don't make fun of it. Okay, I'll read you one of my favorites. Yesterday's love. The love I had for you yesterday isn't the same any longer, 'cause a day has passed, and once again, my love has grown stronger.
Wow. Hey, what are we doing for lunch today? Any idea?
You don't really like it, do you?
No, it was great. It was wonderful. I didn't have breakfast, so I'm just kind of hungry and kind of have that on my mind, and just kind of like to get something in mind, so I can look forward to it.
Okay, well, just one more, and this time you have to be honest with me, okay?
Honest? Sweetheart, I've been honest with girls before, and let's just say it didn't work out too well. I was honest with them, they didn't like what I had to say, and then all of a sudden they're gone, and I'm all alone.
Greg, I'm not going anywhere. I just really want to know what you like, okay? I want you to always trust me as a person. This means I must always be me, not who I think I am expected to be at the moment. I must let you in, share my innermost feelings with you. I must be honest, never deceitful, never false.
Oh, that was great, sweetheart. That's wonderful. It just got me right there.
What is the best thing you can do for your boyfriend or your girlfriend? I've been asking that question to different people and have been getting some interesting responses. Some people have said the best thing you can do for your boyfriend or your girlfriend is to be yourself. Be honest with who you are. Don't fudge the truth. Others have said the best thing you can do for a boyfriend or a girlfriend is to accept them as they are. Take them at face value. Don't try to change them. Others have said, no, the best thing is to compromise, to recognize that life is not always the way you want it. You've got to give a little to get a little. Others have said, well, no, probably the best thing you can do is work through the issues that come your way. Work hard, have a commitment, don't leave them standing or hanging. One pastor said to me, the best thing you can do for your boyfriend or girlfriend is to practice abstinence before marriage. So I've asked a lot of people, what's the best thing? And have gotten various and sundry answers. I even suspect that there are those among us who say the best thing you can do for a boyfriend or girlfriend is find out what Scripture has to say about such relationships. Follow the pattern that is set down in the Bible for choosing a spouse and marrying a lifetime partner. That's the best thing you can do. Well, it's probably a good idea. It certainly sounds good anyway. But it doesn't take too long of reading through the pages of Scripture to realize that was a very different world from this one. In fact, in that day and time, the process of choosing who you were going to marry wasn't all that difficult, at least not for you, because your parents typically made the choice. Now, I know that every young adult here hyperventilates at that idea. But the truth is, that's the way it frequently was. Mom and Dad made the choice. You didn't have difficulty choosing. You might have a lot of difficulty living with the choice. So pretty quickly, you begin to realize, if I just take the Bible as it reads, there might be some pretty significant problems in terms of what the best thing to do for a boyfriend or a girlfriend is. I mean, after all, take as one example, Abraham. Abraham has a son named Isaac. He wants his son to have a wife. He doesn't want her to be from the nations around them. So Abraham gives his servant a task. He says, I want you to go back to my homeland and choose a wife for my son Isaac from there, not from the nations around us. And so the servant goes back. He arrives back in that homeland. He comes to the watering hole, which had a different connotation in that day than in ours. Came to the watering hole and uttered a prayer. He said, God, I pray that the women who will come here to water their camels will listen to me when I ask one of them, could you give me something to drink? The one who answers by saying, absolutely, here's something to drink, and I'll water your camels as well. Let her be the one. So maybe that's the best thing. Look for a watering hole, find some camels, and pray for a sign. Maybe God will help you there. Or what about the story at the tail end of the book of Judges? Horrible story. Maybe the worst story in all the Bible. Last 3 chapters of Judges. You remember the story. It's filled with mayhem and murder and destruction. In fact, by the end of the story, coming almost to the end of the book, you have only 400 Benjaminite men left. One tribe has been almost totally obliterated. Well, after all that has happened, all the bloodshed that has taken place, the other tribes in Israel get to looking around and they say, we don't want the tribe of Benjamin to disappear off the map. And yet that's exactly what's going to happen because they don't have enough women to have wives. We can't give them wives as our daughters because we took a vow that said no other Israelite would give a wife to a Benjaminite of his daughter because they were complicit in all that occurred. So what will we do? And then they have an idea. They say to these 400 men of Benjamin, listen, there's a dance that takes place down in Shiloh. Go down to that dance. Hide in the bushes and watch when the young maidens come out to dance. As you're watching, pick one that you like. And at the signal, everybody rush out and grab her and then hightail it for home. That way, nobody can accuse us of giving them to you as wives. And so the curtain falls on the book of Judges with 400 men dragging kicking, screaming brides home. I mean, it gives a whole new interpretation to blind dating. So if you decide, I want to find out, when I hear the question, what's the best thing you could do for a boyfriend or girlfriend? I want to find out what the Scripture says. Be careful. Let me know how that works out. Because there are some most unusual things in the Bible when it comes to these kinds of relationships. So what about it? What is the best thing you can do for a boyfriend, for a girlfriend? This is, you recognize, a very important question. It's an important question for this whole community. It is for 2 reasons. Reason number 1, by the estimates that are bandied about today, approximately 90 million, 90 million people in America are single. 90 million. That's almost 1/3 of us. If this congregation is reflective of the general trends, and there's no reason to believe it is not, then on any given Sabbath morning at worship, there are hundreds and hundreds of people among us who are single. Those are the trends. That's what they say. For those people, they are desirous of deep and intimate and lasting relationships as well. So a question such as this one has pertinence. But there's a second reason as well. We all want stable and happy and lasting marriages. And yet in our culture, this experience of being boyfriend and girlfriend is a prelude to being engaged, which is a prelude to marriage. Therefore, if we want the end product to be stable and happy and lasting, does it not make sense to go back to the earlier part and to ask the question, what's the best thing we could do there? Because doing the right things there raises the possibilities that we will be happy with the outcome later. So what is the best thing? Well, before I give you my suggestion, I want to take you to a passage of Scripture. We're going to helicopter in to the second part of Paul's letter to Ephesus. We're going to Ephesians chapter 4. If you're reaching for a pew Bible, it's page 1743. 1743, Ephesians 4. Let me set a bit of the scene. What's happening here is that in the first half of Ephesians, Paul has written to his friends about what it means to be a disciple of Christ. You belong to Jesus, he says. Since you belong to Jesus, it is amazing the blessings and the gifts he gives to you. Since you're his, he says, what's his is yours. He has poured out all of heaven on you. You have the riches, the unsearchable riches of Christ at your demand and command. That's the first half of Ephesians. It's our identity. But in the second half, he now comes to practical instructions. He's going to talk with us about how we are to live as growing disciples of Christ. If you want to be a growing disciple, he's saying, here is how you are to order your life. Here is how you are to conduct your relationships, to manage all of your affairs. And he gets very specific about how we are to live. He talks a great deal about relationships and how we are to conduct them in home, in the neighborhood, at the business, all the facets of our lives. It is in that counsel that I want to turn to two verses, just two verses. Two verses that I think can be very instructive for us when we talk about the best thing we can do for a boyfriend or a girlfriend. So go with me to Ephesians 4, Ephesians chapter 4. I'll tell you the immediate context. Paul is in the verse we're about to read, writing to people who have manifested instability. They need to grow. They need to have their feet firmly planted on the ground. He says, you are being blown and tossed about by every theological breeze that happens to whistle in through the window. So there's something you need to do. Ephesians 4, verse 15, he says, this is what it is. Instead, speaking the truth in love, we will in all things grow up into Him who is the head, that is, Christ. So what's his principle there? He is urging them in their growth toward maturity, spiritual maturity, but the same principles apply to relational maturity. He is encouraging them to speak the truth, but do it in love, to be truthful and honest. Remember that verse, and let's go to the second verse. It's 10 verses further down, verse 25. He returns to and elaborates on the same theme. It says, therefore, each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to your neighbor, for we are all members of one body. If in the first verse he was saying, be willing to speak the truth, now he's talking about an ability to make judgments between what is truth and what is falsehood. He says, you have to take off falsehood and put on truthfulness. Well, if you're going to do away with one and bring the other in, you have to be able to judge between them, to see the difference between them. So out of those two verses, I want to suggest what to me might just be the most important thing you can do for a boyfriend or a girlfriend, whether you are 18 or 38 or 68. Here's what it is. It can be captured in one word. The word, truthfulness. Truthfulness. Now maybe you say, well, that's nice. Sounds good, but what specifically does that mean? What specifically are you suggesting? Well, there are two suggestions I would make about truthfulness in the context of a relationship. First suggestion is this: be willing to speak the truth. That's Paul's admonition in verse 15. Be willing to speak the truth. Think about it. The process of dating in our modern world is a great deal about putting your best foot forward, putting on a good face, looking your best so that you will attract someone else. It's all about saying, I'm worth spending time with. It's about being the best that you can possibly be, whether or not that is actually true. Now, that's all fine and good for a while. But after a period of time, You move beyond this matter of simply trying to put your best foot forward, and you enter into an area where it becomes extremely important to speak truthfully. This is who I am. This is what I like, what I don't like, what I see, what I think, what I feel. It's important to say, this is the reality of the person in whom you are interested. It seems to me that often we are afraid to do that. We end up, maybe, alone. In fact, I know one person in the people helping professions who says this, who says, you should never marry a person on whom you have not run a credit report. And you say, wait a minute, isn't that a bit cynical? Well, maybe so, but maybe some of that cynicism is born of sitting in the counseling office time after time with person after couple after family and hearing people say, he's not who I thought he was, she isn't who I thought she was. Some of that will happen regardless of what you do. But maybe there is something to this speaking the truth. Winston Churchill said, a lie gets all the way around the world while truth is still trying to get its pants on. It is so true. The projections, the things we speak that are not true, what we want people to know, seem to make their way around while we're still lingering, dilly-dallying with whether or not to be real. Because to be real can risk the relationship. Sir Peter Lely was the portrait painter for the royalty in England for a certain period in his life. There came a moment in time when Sir Peter was to paint the portrait for Oliver Cromwell. I want you to listen to what Oliver Cromwell said to Sir Peter about how he wanted to be painted. Cromwell said to Lily, Mr. Lily, I desire that you would use all your skill to paint my picture truly like me, and not to flatter me at all, but include all these roughnesses, pimples, warts, and everything as you see me. Otherwise, I will never pay a farthing for it. I wonder how far Cromwell's thinking would go in our age with the airbrush models and the superficial relationships. Paint me just like I am. I want everything, warts, pimples, all. I want to be known for who I truly am. That's a scary process. Now, please, don't do that on your first date. You don't need to unload the whole dump truck at one shot. Take your time. But there is an appropriateness to unpacking the reality of who you are. And because of that, in terms of telling the truth about who you are, your greatest ally may simply be time. Time. Don't rush things. Take your time. I want to read to you the words of John Van Epp. John Van Epp, writing in the theologically titled book, How to Avoid Marrying a Jerk, has this to say. He says, you cannot rush intimacy. You caught that? You cannot rush intimacy. There is no way to really know someone without spending ample time with them. Studies have supported this repeatedly. Couples who marry after knowing each other less than 2 years have close to twice the divorce rate than the couples who date longer than 2 years. Please don't tell our kids how long we dated. Did you hear what he said? 2 years or more helps. Couples who marry each other after knowing each other less than 2 years, writes Epp, have close to twice the divorce rate than couples who date longer than 2 years. In addition, couples marrying before the age of 22 also have a much higher divorce rate than those who marry older. The reason for this is more, says Epp. It is more than just maturity. There's a need to establish autonomy before creating a family. When you exit one family and enter immediately into another, you are likely to transfer unresolved issues from one to the next. Like intimacy, autonomy and maturity require time and experience. In fact, he says, couples who marry for the first time after the age of 28 have the lowest divorce rate. These couples have probably dated the longest and have developed a strong sense of personal autonomy. Epp then continues. This is not to say that anyone who marries with less than 2 years of courtship will have a poor relationship or end up divorced. But I want to stress that your vulnerability is heightened. Did you catch that? I want to stress that your vulnerability is heightened when you do not honor the need for diverse experiences of mutual self-disclosure over time. Without sufficient time, your knowledge of the other person is limited. Although some accurately fill in the gaps for what they did not know, most discover irritating or unacceptable characteristics of the other person which could have been foreseen and worked on had they just had more time. So Paul, in speaking to the church at ancient Ephesus, about how to live together as a mature community, said to them, speak the truth. Do it in love, but speak the truth. It could just be that truthfulness might be the most important thing you can give, the most important gift you can give to a boyfriend or a girlfriend. What does that mean specifically? First suggestion, be willing to speak the truth. The couple, Greg and Cassie reading, Greg listening? Maybe. Truth. Can you speak the truth? This interests me, that does not. I enjoy this, I don't enjoy that. Can you speak truth to the degree that there is a level of openness and understanding as you make decisions about the future of your relationship? It is sometimes amazing the things that we neglect to speak and hear while still just dating. So, what's the most important thing to me? I would push truthfulness up probably to the very top of the list. First suggestion, be willing to speak the truth. But there's a second suggestion. The second suggestion I would make is be willing to see the truth. Be willing to see the truth. Remember what Paul said in verse 25. He said, I want you to take off falsehood and I want you to put on truth. You have to know how to distinguish one from the other. You have to be able to see the difference. Sometimes that involves seeing in yourself what is false. In relational terms, what is not working or workable. Be willing to see the truth. Do you notice that one of the most difficult people for you to tell the truth to is yourself? Have you noticed that? It is so easy to keep myself in denial about what are sometimes blaring and glaring realities to other people. It is sometimes the case that in a relationship, the people around you look and say, that's not good. And yet the two people involved have a refusal to see it. Take, for example, a relationship that is characterized by always working on problems. You've known such relationships, haven't you? You've been, maybe, in such relationships. You're just dating, but there's always an issue, always a problem. We're always trying to work through this. We're trying to work through that. In fact, your friends sooner or later begin to say, they're working on another issue. It's always going on that way. What do you do with something like that? Maybe the best advice is 2 words. Break up. End it. At least that's the counsel of Mike Tucker. Mike Tucker gives that counsel in his book, The Irrefutable, Irrevocable, Unalterable Laws of Dating. His law number 1 is simply this: if early on it's not fun and enjoyable, end it. But listen to what he writes. Once a young couple who had been dating for a little over a year said to me, "You've just got to help us. We've struggled so hard to keep this relationship together. It seems that every time we have a new challenge, something new comes along, and we've got another challenge we have to work on. But we're committed to making this thing work. I asked, why? Well, the question shocked him, understandably. I continued, why would you work so hard to keep this relationship alive? To this point, according to what you've told me, you have proven one inescapable fact. Maintaining a relationship between the two of you is very difficult. I'd advise you to break up and find someone with whom maintaining a relationship is much easier. The couple was stunned. But after listening for a while, they began to understand. That's pretty harsh medicine, is it not? Please understand what I am not saying. Every relationship has its challenges, married, engaged, or single. Every relationship has its challenges. I'm talking about relationships that are characterized by struggle. If you are characterized by struggle, please understand this. Marriage tends to exacerbate the difficulties of dating. And during dating, if you're already characterized by struggle, let me tell you, marriage is going to be a long, hot summer. That's just the reality. So what do? I can remember being a student, Southwestern Adventist University in Keene, Texas. Remember sitting out in my car in front of the girls' dorm and looked up at the entrance. It was an evening. And out of the door of the girls' dorm came a friend of mine. He came bounding down the stairs, went running across the lawn. Halfway across the lawn, he leaped into the air and punched the sky. I thought, like, man, did you just throw the winning touchdown in the Super Bowl? He was pumped up. Well, I was curious what had happened. Maybe she said yes. I didn't know what was going on. So I chased him down and grabbed him, turned around and said, hey, how are you doing? I'm doing great. What's going on? What happened in there? You know what he said to me? He said, she broke up with me. Yeah. I said, excuse me? She broke up with me. I take it this is a good thing. Yes. Well, you think, why did he keep on and on? I can't answer that question, but I can tell you this. Far better in his life and hers that it ended there. In fact, here's a question I would urge you to ask when it comes to this issue of whether or not you're willing to see the truth. Ask yourself this question about your relationship. If you're dating, regardless of your age, look at your relationship comprehensively. Look at the strengths, the good things, your enjoyable times together. Look at the challenges, the problems, the difficulties. Look at all of it together and then ask yourself this question. If this relationship stays just like this, if it doesn't change, if we're still enjoying all the good things and we're still struggling with all the bad things, 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years, is that okay? Is that okay? I've seen couples who ask themselves that question and who say, yeah, you know, it really is. I'm not wild about certain things, but they're not major issues, and there are so many positives. Yeah, if it didn't change, I'd be okay. And then I've seen couples who say things like, oh, no. He has got to cut the umbilical cord to his mommy. If he doesn't do that, forget it. What? And you're planning on getting married? I ate Chinese food at one time, opened the fortune cookie. Here's what it said. When skating on thin ice, your safety is in your speed. If you ask yourself that question, if these issues remain the same, is it okay? And you say, no, but it will change. That, my friends, is what is known psychologically as thin ice. Thin ice. In fact, my observation has been that there are a lot of people out there who want to drive a Lexus. They want to drive a Lexus. But the problem is that they shop at the Toyota dealership. They want to drive a Lexus, but they go to the Toyota dealership and they shop and they look at all the cars and they stand at one angle and the other and say, you know, if you look at it from this side, it really does kind of look like a Lexus. That looks pretty good. And if you come over here and look at this, you can hardly tell the difference. In fact, when we took it on a test drive, I know it rattled and shook a little more, but I mean, I could almost feel like it was a Lexus. And so they buy the Toyota. They drive it off the showroom floor, and they spend the next 5 years trying to bang it into a Lexus. But at the end of the 5 years, they don't have a Lexus. All they have is a beat-up Toyota. If you want to drive a Lexus, shop at the Lexus dealership. If you want to marry an Adventist, date an Adventist. If you want to marry somebody who talks with you, date somebody who talks with you. If you want to marry somebody who's home in the evenings, don't marry somebody who works 12 to 18-hour days. Because you will spend the next years of your life trying to bang that Toyota into a Lexus, and it will not happen. Paul says, be able to distinguish between falsehood and truth. Relationally speaking, I think what that means is be willing to see the truth. Maybe that's why Mark Twain said, when it comes to marriage, keep your eyes wide open before and half closed after. So what is the best thing that you can do for a boyfriend or a girlfriend? There are no doubt many answers to that question, answers that ought to be up near the top of the list. But if you ask me, I would say just keep nudging truthfulness higher. Higher until it's right there at the top. What does truthfulness mean? It means be willing to speak the truth. That shows the other, that identifies for the other who you are. And secondly, be willing to see the truth. That allows you to see the truth about them and about the overall relationship. I speak to this issue with some degree of passion for two reasons, one personal, one professional. On the personal side, as I look back over the trajectory of my life and I think back to my dating years, that's been some years ago. That was in the last century. Actually, that was in the last millennia. As I look back, I have come to realize that my dating life was often not under the reign of Jesus, under the lordship of Jesus. And I have recognized that with some degree of sadness. And it's become my purpose to say to those who are going through, you will spare yourself much heartache if in your dating relationship you bring your life under the lordship of the one who says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. That's the personal side. But the professional side is I've had the wonderful opportunity for years now to live and to work on a university campus. And because of that, I have had many opportunities to sit down with couples, many of them in their university years, quite a few of them well beyond those years, and to talk about these matters, to discuss these kinds of issues. And it just comes home clearly to me. If we are committed in our relational life to truthfulness and to honesty and to integrity at that point in our lives, so much good can follow. So it's for me a privilege to issue a call to any of you who are at that point in your life. You're single, you have a boyfriend, you have a girlfriend, you're 18, 38, 68, at whatever age you find yourselves, to say, bring that facet of your life under the lordship of Jesus. Make your discipleship commitment to follow Him clear even in your life of dating. And speak the truth with love, with wisdom, with time, but speak the truth. and see the truth. Because the Lord who has created you and me for relationship, as He continues to guide in your life, will give you the deepest, the most enduring, the most eternal desires of your heart.